I'm resuming the recording. Didn't think we needed all that pause time. And some things to know. We do have a decent sized group. I would love to have some input and feedback. So please feel free to ask questions and share ideas in the chat box. If you have a question and at some point in time it does not get answered, please resubmit that in the chat box with your email address, and I'll go through and make sure that all of the questions are answered at the end. We do want to make sure that this is an environment where everyone feels comfortable sharing. I think that's one of the best things about some of our online sessions is the fact that there is the ability to go ahead and share even just through the chat box. Please make sure that you mute yourself when you're in a session and not talking, because some of the background noises do become distracting to others. And like I said, add your email address with a question in the chat box if you have any questions. Now, I know some of you are like, she's giving me Zoom skills. We have already survived a year and a half of distance learning, but I know we also have a lot of people that are Google Meet people. So just to be fair, I would love to know what area of the state all of you are from. So if you could rename yourself, and to do that, if you go down to the bottom toolbar, you'll see participants. And when you open the participant list, there is either 3 dots or the word more next to your name. And if you can just rename it, maybe just your first name and the area of the state that you're joining from. And I'm going to give you a few minutes to make those changes. And I also wanted to share that this session is being recorded so that you are able to come back and view some of the information if you need to, or that you're able to share it with other people within your school that might be going through some of the blended and virtual learning program work this year. And another thing within Zoom is, like I said, please go ahead and make sure that you're muted. There will be times when you can definitely unmute and share. And it does not matter if you have your video on or off. If you do not want to be on camera, all you have to do is click the stop video and it'll be X'd out. So one last thing, to make it a little bit more interactive, you are always able to share some Zoom reactions, and Becky will kind of be gauging some of that. So if you get really excited or you raise your hand and want to share, Becky's going to be doing that, and she is absolutely free at any time just to jump in and say, hey, Karen, before you go on, we have some questions. Also, at the end of today's session, you will be provided with a link to a landing document. And that landing document will have all of the links to today's session. It'll link to the slide deck, some of the interactive documentation that we'll be working on, and actually part of the blueprint that you'll be able to go back and read through on your own. You may also notice at the bottom of the landing page will be 2 Zoom links for a follow-up session. I will have 2 follow-up sessions that will actually provide more hands-on application for teachers that are going through the virtual or blended programs. One will be at 10 o'clock on July 27th, and the exact same information will be shared at 2 o'clock on that same day. So I'm trying to provide some, flexibility for some of you, but hopefully you will be able to come and join me for one of those sessions. So my session objectives for today is we're going to share some of the information, or I'm going to share some of the information that districts are planning for the 2021-22 school year. We're going to go through some of the benefits and challenges of blended and virtual instruction. I'm going to share information on our blueprint that actually has 7 areas of focus that are noted as qualities of strong virtual or blended programs. And we're going to talk about determining strategies to provide access or improve quality for such programs. Also, in the spirit of transparency, I would like to let you know that we do have a member of the media today. Rory Taylor from OETA has joined us, so I'm very excited. Thank you, Rory. And so quickly, my agenda. We've gotten through some of the introductions. I'm going to define virtual and blended learning because although we use those words, I just want to make sure that you and I are kind of talking on the same level and connotation and understanding. Again, we'll talk about some of the benefits and challenges. I will share some survey information that may be pretty enlightening for you, the blueprint, and then there will be time for reflection. And I'm not sure if any of you were able to watch Superintendent Hoffmeister's section this morning. She spoke with several members of her student advisory panel. And I think it was really interesting to hear the student reflections related to the past school year. One that really was interesting to me was, although many times we might think our students are completely burnt out on technology, as many of the teachers are as well. One student, Emily, said she thought it was actually really good to continue the use of technology in the classroom and through instruction because it provided students more of a kind of like an inside view of how they're going to function in college. For several years at a school I worked at in Georgia, we were talking about the fact that we kind of anticipated most students would take at least one class online during their college career. And obviously that was kind of blown out of the water. And we also had students sharing that they thought many of the activities and lessons that their teachers provided for them opened up more options for them, whether it was maybe carrying some materials already on a device instead of carrying notebooks, but just kind of the opportunity of selecting their own pace and place and path of instruction. As I'm going through here today, I am going to have us first reflect upon the past school year. COVID did close many, not all schools across Oklahoma, and some schools were closed for extended periods of time, and some schools transitioned back and forth from in-person to distance learning, and it created a new mindset for many people. And some districts had decided to continue with some different instructional options for their students. And like I said, in order to support these options, it's first to really important to clarify and define the perimeters. So one word I will be using is virtual instruction. We do have many schools across our state that is planning to offer full-time virtual instruction for their students, and those students will take all of their classes away from the brick and mortar setting through web-based instruction. That does not mean that those students could not come onto campus and receive tutoring or assistance, but no physical attendance is required in a building for those courses. We also have blended learning or blended instruction. We actually have a legislative definition for this in Oklahoma. So I'm just going to read it word for word, and I tried to highlight some of the important words, but according to our Oklahoma legislation, blended instruction is instruction in which a student is enrolled in a combination of both brick and mortar learning and virtual learning. That includes elements of students' control over place, pace, and path of their instruction. Students that are participating in blended learning can work on their virtual classes either at home or in a blended flex lab setting at a school, but they must participate in at least one unit or a set of competencies at a physical school building in at least one traditional class setting during a school year for 1 hour per day. So, both of these, blended and virtual learning, have merits and complexities to their structure. And to determine which one or ones may work for a district, you really have to make sure that you're reading through these definitions and examining these options closely. So I know that you probably have already considered that there are definitely benefits and challenges related to both virtual and blended instruction. So what we're going to do first is we're going to take a few minutes to have you share your own personal either experiences and thoughts related to virtual and blended instruction. So you will be able to access this document in 3 ways, and it's going to allow you the ability to share your thoughts. You can either type in the bit.ly that's written there. You can use a cell phone or iPad or tablet device and scan the QR code on the left-hand side. Or Becky is also, I believe, sharing a direct link to that document in the chat box. If you're using the bit.ly link, please remember that bit.lys are just short URL addresses, but they are case sensitive. So in this case, the V, the B, and the L would all need to be capitalized. And I'd like you just to take, 3 or 4 minutes to share your ideas. Just select a box, type it in, and share your ideas on what are some of the benefits and what are some of the challenges to both or either or. And please do not worry if someone else shares the same thought or idea. I think that's really important because then we're able to see that it's not just one person with their feelings, and it helps us see some of the commonalities. So I'm going to stop sharing real quick. Well, there we go. And I am going to pull up my copy so that I am able to see some of your responses related to that. Thank you, Becky. Okay, we do have it. It is good for students. It does provide responsibility and allows them to gain some of those executive functioning skills. The parents probably are participating more as partners than when they would just send their children to school. Now they're in these opportunities, they're seeing a little bit more about what's going on behind the scenes. I keep seeing the word flexibility just continue to come up more and more. Family involvement. Thank you, Becky, for adding some more lines to that. Definite challenges, Wi-Fi connection. I know I've seen very creative ways in which districts provided Wi-Fi for students. And let's see, motivation. I've noticed that with my own children. While they may have enjoyed getting up and going to school and being with their friends, they weren't quite as motivated to get up and sit in front of a computer themselves. It is good for students that are absent a lot. Let's see, I think some of our things might have been deleted, Becky. Internet access. Oh my goodness, you teachers that did both online instruction and face-to-face and were doing lesson plans that were so flexible. Oh my goodness, you have been amazing. And I'm going to reflect back to Superintendent Hoffmeister's session this morning. That was one of the takeaways, that the students realized just how much time and effort teachers put into creating an instruction. And great. Oh yeah, parents, it's difficult. Parents are often having full-time jobs, and at the same time, they're working hard to make sure that their children are set and ready for class and instruction. So let's see if I can go back, and please keep sharing. One of the things that I'm very excited about is the ability to go back and look at some of these answers, and that will definitely help us here at the State Department of Education as we move forward. Okay, so I'm going to go back now that we've thought of some of the benefits and challenges of both types of learning. I want us to think of it as this way. Picture you're a pilot and you're sitting in the cockpit of an airplane. COVID caused many changes in the field of education. New doors were opened and schools now understand that there were benefits and challenges. So many times people do focus on the challenges and may not always consider some of the benefits. Well, COVID has caused us to be shaken out of complacency. And now we're able to think about education a little differently. Many districts have decided to take advantage of this moment and make a change. But positive change takes forethought and planning, which is something that we did not have when we were going through COVID. Many times it was just day-to-day survival. Well, now moving forward, just like a pilot, we, the world, your school, your district, teachers, we're sitting on a runway. And it's now time for us to make a decision. Do we want to go ahead and take off and see future possibilities? Or do we just want to turn around and taxi back to the airport and allow life to return to just the way it was before the pandemic? Well, many districts in our state have decided to go ahead and take off instead of turning around. So I think that that's pretty exciting. I think these next slides are going to be eye-opening. So earlier this spring, I shared a statewide technology survey. This survey was shared with district leaders, both through the Oklahoma State Department's weekly administration newsletter and also by some of the RAOs across the state. Although we did not receive responses from every district, we did receive responses from 452 districts. And out of those 452 districts, 217 stated that they plan to offer full-time virtual instruction as an option during this upcoming school year. And I know 217 seems like a lot anyway, but I kind of wanted to put it on a map so you could see this isn't one specific area of the state. This is all across the state. This causes many questions to come to mind. I don't know if they're just offering it, how many students have accepted, how many teachers will be participating, and I believe we'll be able to do some follow-up questioning related to that, but that's a pretty significant number. Now, in addition to that, again, remember 452 responses, 251 districts say they plan to offer blended learning as an option. Okay, now there is the possibility when this survey was shared that it was stated, please select which you plan to do, full-time traditional face-to-face, full-time virtual, and or blended learning. They could select any and all. So when you put them together on a map and compile all of those responses, I would love to have some feedback. I'm going to ask you, what do you notice and what do you wonder when looking at this map and these responses? Please go ahead and share some of those notices and wonders in the chat box. Any ideas? I can see Angel in the chat said her district is offering all three options. Margie, great comment. Western part of the state does have some spotty internet, so that those districts that are planning to do that will have to obviously keep that in mind and think about that. Any other notices and wondering? Becky said that there is an overlap in some of the virtual and blended locations. And yes, some schools are offering both. Heavier populated areas are offering more options, absolutely. That's a great question. You know, not only, I know here we're working a flex schedule and the State Department where we are still working from home sometimes. Maybe more parents are doing that, and you know, schools are recognizing that they need to provide options. It is blended very heavily on the east side of Oklahoma. More blended than virtual, yes. And Jackie shared that their district is offering all 3 options for 9 through 12. But there are a lot of challenges, especially when you're thinking some of the younger grades. So I would love to have you continue to share some thoughts. But you know, when you're looking at this map, we know that different planning and preparation has to be offered to these districts that are deciding to make this change, because it's really not something that, you know, it does take different preparation than a traditional face-to-face classroom. During COVID pandemic, districts supported families in a myriad of ways. And we do know that well-designed and successful programs underscore the need for support by districts. So during the spring of 2020 and moving forward, I'm sharing the results of a survey that were shared with Oklahoma teachers. And these were many of the supports that districts provided during those initial stages of the pandemic. As you see, some of the past supports are not as relevant necessarily moving forward. While providing PPE and paper packets were necessary then, those definitely, probably not PPE, they're not going to be considered the essential components of a strong virtual or blended program. And not only have the supports changed, but people's view of educational options have changed as well. So with those in mind, what are some of the supports you think are necessary as we move forward with virtual and blended options? You are either welcome to unmute or share some, especially when you're comparing. We know many districts will still continue to provide food. Paper packets probably are not going to be the best option if we're doing virtual. That kind of is implied by the name virtual. Some say that they're going to have state government help with rural internet access. So yes, I could see supports with any kinds of access and devices and hotspots. Great. Okay, tutoring. Bilingual text support. I had not even considered that. But you know, it is important. The parents are going to have to be able to provide some of that support as well. And we do have many multi-language families. Parent education on technology, absolutely. What about some of the teacher supports? How do you think those might differ? Families trained and onboarding on their hands-on supplementing and involvement. But we haven't seen very much response for teacher or school district support. And like I said, when COVID came, we just said, threw our hands in the air and said, you got to keep teaching. And, you know, everyone kind of made their own way of doing things. Well, one thing that we did here at the Oklahoma State Department of Education, because many districts were unsure of how to support programs. So we in the past have offered a network of learning. And that was a support that about 12 to 20 schools would meet in a cohort session. We met about twice a month, and it was a wide range of topics. Districts would say, we need help with this, and we would find the people that could provide the support and training for that. And it was a great way that schools could share their ideas and successes. But now that we see the continued need, we're working to create new levels of guidance and support. So that is actually where the Blueprint for Successful Virtual and Blended Programs comes in. And what this is a document. It was created with multiple forms of support and ideas across the Oklahoma State Department of Education. We also had WestEd and the National Center for Systemic Improvement share ideas and edits and suggestions. And we also took ideas from across our own network of learning cohort. And what we did is we tried to create a guide. What would be helpful to schools and districts and teachers moving forward that would help them kind of gauge their level of success? So the goal for this document is to have multiple people within one district or school self-evaluate their current experiences with those recommended indicators in the blueprint. And it will help them identify an area or areas within the blueprint to focus their improvement efforts on based upon that district data. We also would like to establish a continuous improvement plan within those districts with specific actions and steps for districts and schools and teachers to take to achieve success. We know that this will facilitate ongoing professional growth among teachers, and hopefully this will be able to foster a collaborative environment among districts to share experiences and best practices. And when you see this blueprint, it's not necessarily a checklist of actions to mark off when they're completed, but it's to be used as a guide to facilitate growth within each program's unique and culture and climate. I am really excited to share, though, that this document was so well thought of and created that the National Center for Systemic Instruction actually took this and created their own based upon this information. So when I'm sharing this, I want you to know that it's not just one or two people that sat down and said, we think we know what we can tell schools that will help them be successful. There was a lot of planning and behind the scenes that went into this. So the blueprint is based upon 7 areas of focus, and these are all research-based. Each one is going to be broken down into specific indicators of best practices. These focal areas are not meant to be viewed in isolation, but to build upon each other and interconnect with common themes and practices. And as I said, there are multiple indicators for each area of focus, several of which are deemed as foundational, as in schools must have this to be successful. So the first area is equity, and no virtual or blended program can achieve an equitable learning experience for students unless all the students it serves have equitable access to service and equitable opportunities for success. Equity is the attainment of comparably positive outcomes for all groups within or served by a program. To provide equitable access and opportunities, programs must demonstrate an understanding of the unique strengths, aspirations, challenges, and barriers of individual students. And equity must be centered in all aspects of the program, from the leadership to the professional development and learning and instruction, digital inclusion, instructional materials, and on. The second area of focus in the blueprint is positive relationships. And In order to effectively teach, learn, and thrive, humans must first feel physically and emotionally safe and socially and emotionally connected through positive and responsive relationships. This means high quality relationships are prerequisite for student, teacher, leader, and family learning, engagement, and well-being. These interactions are particularly critical in a virtual or blended environment where stakeholders are often separated by distance and time. For virtual and blended programs to be of high quality, they must make purposeful efforts to build those positive relationships among everyone involved. And like we've said, many teachers have already claimed it's very difficult. How do I build those relationships with those students when I'm not seeing them maybe walk into my classroom door every day? And how can I make sure that my classroom or my classwork is engaging and inviting and students want to come and attend? The third area of focus is culture and climate. And these refer to the effect the school environment has on students, staff, parents, and community. Specifically, a school's culture and climate reflect those relationships between the stakeholders and how they work together for the betterment of the school system. An inclusive, productive program climate and culture provides a safe, encouraging, and supportive learning environment for all students. Program culture arises from shared beliefs among stakeholders about teaching and learning, norms of interacting, and values. So, area of focus number 4 is the one that I'm going to return to and dive deeper in today. But obviously, instruction is an integral part of education. Instruction is going to be identified as the pedagogical actions and decisions of teachers and staff to deliver content to their students. This area of focus assumes that virtual and blended instruction is teacher-centered with digital learning platforms used to supplement rather than replace instruction. And I'm really going to focus on that supplement. We have many quality programs that can provide support and supplement, but the teacher should be the connecting point within these programs. It's not just putting students on a device and letting that device teach them. It has to have that interaction. And high quality instruction is best delivered through the use of evidence-based instructional practices that are aligned to our Oklahoma academic standards. Excellent virtual blended programs employ well-trained staff, stay current with emerging knowledges of best practices, and implement instructional practices and policies that capitalize on the advantage of blended and virtual instruction. We kind of touched on some of those earlier, whether it's the personalization of learning opportunities, student flexibility and time, some of the real-time assessment, and the use of technology. Another area of focus within the blueprint is instructional materials. We do know, Becky started smiling because she is part of our instructional materials team, and the term instructional materials is used to describe the format and structure of the content delivered to students within the virtual or blended environment. Those materials may be delivered either synchronously or through asynchronous opportunities. They may be on digital platforms and they may be teacher created. Whatever the delivery method, teachers should drive the content, and that should be driven based upon student need. High quality virtual and blended instructional materials are developed to facilitate learner understanding, support learning content, and allow students to engage in the concepts of, or the application of those concepts. But it is imperative that all materials are aligned to our Oklahoma academic standards with the proper scope, sequence, and rigor. Only 2 left. Area of focus number 6 is professional learning. Professional learning refers to that personal learning that teachers, leaders, and staff undertake to improve their practice. Effective professional learning enables teachers, leaders, and staff to refine and deepen the knowledge and skills needed to ensure that all students reach rigorous and equitable outcomes. So obviously, we need to make sure that as we transition to new forms of instruction, that those teachers are receiving new forms of professional learning, and that they're caught up and excited and ready. And the last area of focus is leadership, because without leadership, all of this falls apart. Okay? Leadership teams ensure a clear and cohesive vision for a blended or virtual program. It should be at the center of every decision and action of that program, and allows for a structure that provides endless possibilities for innovation and student outcomes. But we know how important it is to have the leadership support moving forward. So, based upon those 7 areas of focus, I'm wondering if you might have something that you felt was missing, because our blueprint is still in draft form. And although we've received input from organizations and groups all across our country, there may be something that you see is missing. And I would love to have you share any of your ideas or suggestions in the chat box.
Karen, we did have a question earlier, and in some ways, I think these areas of focus address it, but not really entirely. The question is, what are the parameters for allowing student choice, I think, of blended or virtual, as opposed to being in person? Are you aware of what those are?
Well, I guess it would depend upon, are you talking legal or district choice? Because I think I would need to know a little bit more about some of the thought related to that.
Jamie, that question came from you.
Parameters for allowing.
The choice, yes.
Yeah, district. Okay, so, you know, Oklahoma is a local control state. So districts will be able to go through and set those parameters individually. We do know that there is legislation requirements for, you know, the school year, the same requirements that would be for a regular district. A traditional face-to-face program would still be in effect, but districts will be able to determine how they set the parameters. And I think maybe you might be talking about the fact that some districts have said, if a student decides to go and participate in the virtual, full-time virtual program, they are in that virtual full-time program for at least a semester. You know, we know that it was not beneficial to our students to jump back and forth and be a week face-to-face and then, you know, multiple days virtual and make that transition. So districts will probably set parameters in terms of maybe length of time or ability to transfer back and forth between programs, I would hope. Anything else, Becky?
I will say that there is some response to your questions here, and keeping all students engaged in a lesson is identified as, it's not clear on if it's seen as what's missing or just the importance, but it is listed. And then attendance policies for virtual stuff.
That is a great, challenging question, and that will be one of those that districts will be able to, you know, kind of set those attendance requirements themselves. And I think that when we get to some of those policies, it's really helpful for districts to be able to reach out to each other and share their ideas on how they're establishing attendance, or you know, some of those other requirements or not modifications, you know, specifics for each district. So I hope to be able to pull all of our districts that are participating together in a way that they're able to share information easily among themselves. Anything else? Okay, well, yeah, there's, it goes back and forth on video versus no video. And again, all of those will be up to individual districts to set those requirements. So as we move forward, I just wanted to share a little bit more about the blueprint. Like I said, the blueprint is designed to be a tool for districts as they work to build strong virtual or blended programs. The purpose of the blueprint is that districts or schools can self-evaluate their current state in relation to either providing virtual and or blended instruction. We have to know where we are before we can work to improve or build upon our status. The process for using the blueprint. This tool is not for one teacher or one superintendent or one counselor to sit down and go through. We know that we all have our own ideas of what works and what's not working and our strengths and weaknesses. So ideally, multiple people that are involved in the program should use the blueprint to give that initial evaluation to make sure that all facets and viewpoints are considered. And maybe that even goes some beyond to students and parents, depending upon the age of the students. And then the third P for using the blueprint is a plan. After you've self-evaluated and considered where you are, it would be ideal if schools, districts, even individual teachers identify just one of those areas of focus, one out of the 7 that you or your school can focus on for this upcoming school year. And then you're able to sit down and create like a 30, 60, 90-day plan, and then possibly go through and use the blueprint to reevaluate your status. And maybe you're like, pat on the back, that's awesome, we're ready to move to another area of focus, or we still have a little bit of work yet. And if you think of the history of education in our country or around the world, there have not been a ton of huge shifts in practice. And this is a huge shift. And it will take some time for schools and districts to be able to get it right. So I'm going to share a picture of one of the sections within the blueprint. This is an example of one of the indicators for the area of focus instruction. You're going to notice that each indicator has examples of specific elements related to that indicator. So for this indicator, 4A, ensure that all teachers are state certified with appropriate grade levels and courses taken, and have the mindset, knowledge, and skills to teach within the blended or virtual environment. Course design should include, but are not limited to, and then there are multiple bullet points. Does that mean all of those bullet points need to be checked off? No, but sometimes you're like, how am I supposed to know what's quality? Well, here are some guidelines and specific indicators for that. And if you notice at the bottom, underneath of all the indicators, every single indicator has at least one resource that can provide you guidance and suggestions for improvement. And in this case, it's our own Oklahoma's COSA blended framework. So all of that is linked right within the document that people can use, because there's nothing worse than evaluating yourself and you're like, I need help here, but I don't even know where to turn. So we've done a lot of that work for you. So what I'm going to do is, in just a few minutes or seconds, Becky is going to drop a link to just the instruction section of our blueprint. You will notice it does have the word draft pasted across that because, like I said, this is a learning experience for all of us. And one or more of you may have wonderful suggestions on something that's missing. So I'm going to give you about 10 minutes to just look through the blueprint. At this time, you are able to turn any cameras off and just take some time to look through and read. I'm going to continue to hang out here with my camera on. And at the end of that time, I'm going to provide you a way to share some of your feedback. So Becky, if you would go ahead and drop the link, thank you, to the blueprint. And like I said, this is only one of the 7 sections. And, just I will kind of give you a time update from time to time, and, feel free to unmute and ask questions or add them to the chat as we're going through. And Ken asked a question, is the OSDA, I think he means the Department of Education, working with all colleges to ensure these skills are being taught? I'm assuming you are meaning the general skills that are part of our Oklahoma academic standards. And we would expect students that participate in blended and/or virtual learning to still meet all of those state requirements as with any high school graduate in Oklahoma. So they should be going into college just as a traditional Oklahoma graduate. It's just a different method of instruction. Skill listed on slide 42. I see some questions. I'm going to let you just continue to add some questions to the chat box, and then I will address them all at once. I'm making notes to myself. We have about 3 minutes left. Heidi, you referenced slide 42, and you should be able to see it. It's slide 42 is explore the blueprint, the indicators for instruction.
It's also page 2 on the link provided in the chat.
Okay, yes.
Yeah. Karen, there's another question about the methodology, about curating the resources, and just
Yes.
saying that there was more elementary than secondary.
Okay, well, I'm going to go ahead and address some of the questions. So again, please feel free to place questions in the chat. Please continue to look through that blueprint. You can see that that one area of focus, just instruction, has a lot of meat to it. And that's why I was trying to say, you know, there's no realistic way a district is going to be able to hit all 7 areas of focus successfully in 1 year, because again, we've worked centuries to refine education as it's been. And, you know, this isn't something that can happen overnight. It's just to make changes and have everything work according to plan that very first time. So some of the questions I saw, one question was, it's easier to make and establish relationships in virtual or in blended versus virtual classes. And I do think there is that face-to-face connection that just, I mean, I think that's why most of us went into education. We like being around people. We like those relationships. At the same time, I'm currently working on my doctorate, and 100% of my classwork is online. And I've actually been surprised at the relationships that have been able to be built in some of my solely virtual classes. And, you know, I'm able to take notes and share a lot of ideas and, you know, pull successes together. And that's something that I plan to be able to share with you moving forward, some ideas and suggestions. But I think, again, it kind of goes back to some of that cohort thoughts, is being able to get together and share those successes and some of the failures and talk through some of those. Yes, the Oklahoma State Department of Education will be able to work with and support districts. Do we have all the answers? No, we're learning as we go as well. And right now, honestly, the manpower or support that every single district would require if they've made this choice is pretty staggering. So, you know, we will provide support as needed, as requested, but there's also things that individual districts can do to support teachers and provide professional learning experiences for them that will make these programs successful. The test scores, that's a really good question. I have not seen any of the test scores. You know, I think test scores last year, I will maybe not be the best indicators, because again, last year was kind of like almost, there was not a lot of guidance. there was not a lot of knowledge of some of the best practices. And I think a lot of teachers did all that they could to help and support their students. I think moving forward, we'll be able to, kind of see what's more successful in terms of different content areas and instruction. The resources, I guess there may be more elementary focused resources in just this one area of focus, but please remember this is just a small component of the entire blueprint. We did work really hard to try to make sure that it was not secondary or elementary focused. It has been challenging to find a lot of these resources too. So that's also why, as this is considered a draft, we will be able to continue to add support. And you may find something that you're like, Karen, I think you should share this. I would love to have you share any resources you come across as well. And we can make sure that we have all of that shared across our state. Well, what I would like for you to do now is I'm going to ask for your feedback. And I'm going to ask that you complete this Google form. And it's kind of unique. It's an AEIOU Google form. So I want you to think back on what you just read. And on the A section, share an adjective, list a word, or share a word or two that describes what you felt, you read, you saw, or something that you've heard today. An adjective. The next question is going to be E, an emotion. Describe or share how a particular part of that blueprint section you read, what did it make you feel like? I, interesting, share something or write something you found interesting. O, describe something that caused you to go, oh, or write or share a question about something you've learned or wanted to learn about or still want to learn about. I know I can definitely use this as some feedback and direction for me. And, we've had lots of people look at this, but maybe any feedback we can get would be good as well. So you can access this Google form either from the link that Becky placed in the chat box or from the QR code or from the bit.ly. And once again, bit.lys are case sensitive. And Ken says one of the biggest concerns is that we're being required to implement these advances in technology in our classroom. Success is being measured on how well we implement these tools. The thing is, we're not getting told how to hold students accountable when instruction is virtual. Many times it's challenging to get back to face-to-face, get back in face-to-face. Virtual makes it doubly tough. Those are, great things. I do have suggestions and ideas. And like I said, my July 27th follow-up will be able to provide answers to some of these questions that you're sharing, or like your or, that's why I'm really asking for your thoughts and your input on this.
You did get some positive feedback, Karen, regarding the teacher digital learning guide.
Oh, good.
Especially the examples of the tools developed with the support of IES.
Great, thank you. And another thing is, this is just like one of those little tips. I was that teacher that loved to introduce new technology. I love to share it with teachers, but at the same time, my tip for teachers were, don't try to do too much. Find a tool that works, that provides the support and guidance for your students, and learn to use that and become like an expert in one tool, and allow your students to become that expert in one tool. Because if you're trying to use this for this and this for this, and not only does it cause frustration for you to learn so many different tools and be implementing a whole bunch of things, students also like some of that consistency and like that feeling of becoming comfortable, becoming an expert with that tool before new things are thrown at them. So, and I know that's really difficult, because when you're looking online and finding all these lesson ideas, you're like, that's amazing, that's also amazing. But sometimes you just kind of have to pull back and say, what can I actually do? What is most beneficial? So like I said, I'm hoping that you will provide some good feedback and thoughts just on the section of the document. And while people are still working on the Google form, I do have 3 questions for you right now. Please feel free to unmute. Where do your districts, where do you feel your schools are? And I keep saying the word district because I know oftentimes it's not necessarily a full district that's doing the virtual or blended. It might be a small facet. It might be just a couple teachers. We know the district is critical for the support and guidance, but how do you feel your school? For those of you that are planning to do virtual blended, how do you feel? Are you prepared? How do you think this document might provide you with guidance? What else do you need? And I am going to stop sharing real quick and see if I can jump in to that Google Doc and kind of give you a little bit of an idea of what some people are saying. And then we will move on. I just have a couple more things. I promise I will get you out of here so that it is not taking up all of your day. And I will also make sure that you have my contact information so that as we move forward, if you have other questions, you are able to email me directly. And of course, my form does not want to come up with the answers because my computer says you are just asking too much of me right now. So I'm going to share the last couple slides and then I'll just remain on for some questions. So, like I said, there will be 2 follow-up sessions based with the same amount of information. You are able to sign up for those, and the Zoom follow-up session registration links will be in the landing document that will be shared in just a few minutes. So if you feel you need guidance and support, I would hope that you, or if you're a district admin or a principal, maybe you've got some teachers that you think might be able to benefit from some of this information. I would also like to make sure that you're aware that of our Ready Together Oklahoma program, our action plan for supporting students through the pandemic and beyond. Becky, I don't think I included this on your document, but if you would like to share the Ready Together link in the chat. There's lots of statewide initiatives, guidance documents, and this is focused on all types of instruction, not just specifically blended or virtual. Also, I would like to share my email address again, and I think I will actually pop that into the chat box. I would love to be here to support you. Again, I do not have all the answers. I can look in Google and connect you with people, but please know that I'm here as a resource. Also, within the landing page, which you will see, and Becky can go ahead and put that in there, you will also find a link to a professional learning certificate, and you are able to download that and share that within your district if you need to turn a document in for summer training. Also within that landing page is a link to an exit ticket, and I would love to have your overall feedback. And again, the AEIOU document provided specific feedback, but I would love to hear, this is more of an open forum for you to ask questions and share information. So if you would complete the exit survey, I am just going to stick around and can answer any questions. Please, first of all, thank you for taking the time out of your day. I know I'm kind of fortunate that it was kind of a rainy day. Hopefully it didn't take away from pool time or anything too fun, but I appreciate you taking the time out to listen and think and understand that, first of all, blended or virtual learning is not for all learners. It's not for all teachers. But if you're going to make that decision moving forward, we need to make sure that it's done in a quality way that best supports the education for our Oklahoma students. So thank you again for attending. And like I said, I'm going to stop sharing and just kind of be here and have a great afternoon. This is when you need that exit music too, don't you? Be a little bit more exciting. Becky's going to dance no matter what. And thank you again, Becky, for all of your help with this. I appreciate it. You don't see the link for the certificate. Let me find that. I thought it was the last link on that page. I know that you should also be able to access the certificate. Oh, great. Okay, Ginger. I was going to say you should also be able to access a link to the certificate through your Eventbrite email that confirmed your session. Great. Thank you for attending. I appreciate it.